not get slowly worked in as a goalkeeper. It's all about training. And so, like you said, Bill, you can sit for 3 years and train for 3 years. You could play 2 more years in college, and then you could go somewhere else and then come back.
Yeah. I think it's a tough call because a lot of goalkeepers, when they go to Europe, they're getting in awful environments for development. They're not having a goalkeeper coach. They're not having this and that. In the league, there's a bit of a spectrum with it as well. If there's some really good environments, and there's ones that are kind of lacking a bit. And so if you can get yourself into a better environment, is that really the payoff for no games? Is it better to play in a worse environment? Like, these are kind of the questions that on the men's side, they're not really having to ask as near as often. But on the women's side, like, this is, I mean, it's saying something that a UNC goalkeeper with, years left on the table, 2 years left, is saying like, I'd rather go try pro because I think I can develop better. And I think in some sense you have to respect it, but I think your cause for concern is fair, Sauce, because if she's
I understand the mentality when you go to college. College is, you have blackout periods, right? So you're not allowed to talk to your coaches. You're not allowed to work out. You're supposed to study.
Oh, I thought you were talking about a different blackout period. I was like, I don't
well, that's true too. But you have blackout periods where you can't train.
Yep.
Unless it's on your own, and you can't have any insight, you can't have any coaching or anything like that. And I get that. If you're like, I'm trying to progress, I'm on the youth national team, this and that and the other, and I can't have these moments of pause, in a sense. But at the same time, it's not ripe for goalkeepers. Goalkeepers should not come out early, period. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, obviously, it's just she's put down the microphone. She's literally, I thought she was going to drop.
Goalkeepers should not come out early.
Going to bring it down right there. Well, I mean, look, Bill, in the men's game, this is just the trend now. I mean, we literally were even joking about the fact that like the men's college draft is now a phone call because it's they consider that significant now compared to where it was before, where it was a full-on production because they were looking at these players to be, instant players. Right now, it seems like now in the men's game, any halfway decent player, by 11 or 12 is already snatched up by an MLS Next Academy and is already under contract with them before they even go to college.
Yeah, it's different from there's definitely some parallels and there's definitely some big differences. To give some reference, for the NWSL final, we had 2 young goalkeepers with Manny Hott and Claudia Dickey, and they were 24, 25. So for Emmy Allen, I think she's 21, but Enrique, I think she's 22, 23. Like, to Saskia's point, if Allen gets drafted and she ends up being a young goalkeeper that plays, that's still 3 or 4 years for her. So, then it comes a question. It's like, well, how good is she? Can she play earlier? So, I think if you're gonna roll the dice on this, you really have to put faith in who's picking you up and do they have a track record of taking care of their goalkeepers, or are they just gonna, are they drafting one young goalkeeper and then drafting another young goalkeeper and then not really having a plan for both of them and just seeing what happens? So
well, are they drafting them, training them, and selling them?
Yep.
Let's move on to another prospect that you've liked in the draft right here that you think has the potential to be an NWSL starter one day. Christina Roque. First off, Bill, we're going to put some highlights of her up right now so you guys can kind of see what is it about her that you like. And she's a Puerto Rican international. Is that correct?
Well, I don't know her backstory as I should know, but she could have played for the U.S. She's capped tied with Puerto Rico, so it's like she can't come back. But I think for teams drafting, she is going to be a big plus because she won't count as an international player because she has citizenship here. But for her, she's a really interesting goalkeeper. I think she's probably the number 1 goalkeeper in college with the ball at her feet. She's not perfect by any means, but she is very good. But I think the thing that stands out to me is she plays at the level of her teammates, and maybe in young person's terms, she's a bit of a gamer in the sense that like when it's time to compete, like she shows up. She's not really flashy, and sometimes it can look clunky, like that clip right there looks a little clunky. However, like somehow, some way, she managed to get the job done. So she's a tough goalkeeper to show someone to say like, hey, this is what it should look like. Because there's times I'm like, oh, that looked a little odd. but you can't deny the track record. And I mean, maybe the most confident goalkeeper as well in college. Like that's something that's going to stand out for a lot of pro coaches with when they're looking at who to bring in. Like just a little stuff like on that play where she kind of freezes a little bit, you know, just like, hey, I got like, look at me, I've got the ball. Like that sort of stuff I love. She's got a little bit of flair in her game. So I think she's a really interesting goalkeeper, but she's also can play out of the back, which is a huge plus.
You know, one thing, Suska, that I'm noticing about these profiles of these of these goalkeepers, like Christina Roque, is that, you know, just we were talking about length and wingspan earlier today, and it just seems like the goalkeepers that have that profile are more sought out in the league. Is that just you think just because so many goalkeepers now are coming up with that profile already, being identified, being brought into college, or do you think it's just because they fit the professional game better?
Well, I think the argument here is that, like, you know, Bill said, is that she's good with her feet. And I actually think that's the profile that's being sought after. You know, you have cookie cutter things like goalkeepers can make the saves. They have a long wingspan. They can, you know, go to the upper 90 and everything like that. But who is good and solid with their feet? And, you know, so that is what I think every team is actually looking for.
Yeah. Bill, I mean, you're probably correct on that. Bill, I know that you've been doing a lot of research and analysis in regards to the amount of possession that goalkeepers are playing now in the league. When the college game isn't reflective of the professional game, how difficult is it to scout that?
Well, I think that's part of the complaint from the pro coaches is that a lot of goalkeepers are getting to the level of getting drafted or getting that time to make the jump, and they're not rounded out. They've been really good at 3 out of 4 things, but you know, and even that ball, like that one hangs up a bit, but the right back can pull that down. So, you know, it's who can play out of the back sounds simple, but you just don't see it a lot in the women's game yet. We're getting closer and better, but a lot of teams, you know, at UNC, like they didn't really play out of the back like this. Like Emmy Allen's not doing this sort of stuff. She's not directing traffic or driving that ball there. So, yeah, it's huge in pro game. I think they want the colleges to develop the goalkeeper more. But again, with those kind of blackout periods, it's like, you know, right now, like in January is the time to kind of like really hone in on this stuff. But like goalkeepers are kind of left alone, or they have to go work with their old club coach or something. So it's a tough problem to solve, but it's in high demand nonetheless. That's a good ball there.
No, I mean, these are all really good balls. Let's move on into this next goalkeeper right here. Now, who's this that we're about to see from South Carolina?
Heather Hines. She is really probably one of the more exciting goalkeepers just because I never quite know what I'm going to get. She's a little undersized but immensely athletic, and she has an amazing split save. I mean, I think that's probably the best in the game. She's really agile, and she has to do that to kind of make up for a little bit of height there. But she, I think this is the clip here, kind of like this save here. Like you just don't see that a whole lot. That's starting to creep in a bit more on the collegiate side, but like she makes it look easy, and so she's really exciting because she can do stuff like that and does it again there. But there's times where it's almost too brash, and she's leaning a little bit too much into it. Not as bad as some of her peers, but she's one that is interesting because it's like, well, can she tone up a little bit and clean up a little bit, or is that just what it's going to be like? So she is a really fascinating goalkeeper because for me, this is probably one of the bigger what ifs in the draft of like, well, can she figure it out? Can she clean up her game, or is it always going to be a little sloppy?
But, you know, speaking of that, though, Susk, you know, in regards to the what if types, like, okay, if you're in the later rounds and you want to make sure that she can't get into anybody else's camp, do you take a flyer on a goalkeeper like that because you're like, wow, well, the ceiling on this person is absolutely worth it for us to make sure that they can't go into somebody else's camp, because if they can pop at the professional level, imagine if we had missed out on that.
Well, I think when we see that in the drafts, you know, we see them allow goalkeepers to drop out of the draft and then invite them into camps. I think what you're seeing here is like a Maddie Mangio. Like you're seeing somebody that's so athletic and so, you know, her timing is epic on the through balls and coming off her line and everything. So it's not that you're taking a chance on somebody like this. Look, you have the cookie cutter goalkeepers that right now are like 6 feet tall, right? But then you have to fill that with goalkeepers that are athletic and quick, and maybe they're 5'7", maybe they're 5'8". They get off their line and they make those saves.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking. I mean,
it's a nod to you, Mike.
Oh well. when people think athleticism and goalkeeper profile, they think of me. That is.
I was talking about the short.
Oh, the short. By the way, my men's league is very disappointed that I'm not playing tonight. That I'm here at the United Soccer Coaches Convention instead at beautiful Media Row in Exhibit Hall D, guys. Booth number 008. If you're around, why am I looking around at everybody here as if they're staring at me right now? I should be staring at you, though. Okay, so let's move on, because there's another goalkeeper I think that you were really high on right after her. Welcome to a very live and impromptu Inside the 18 from lovely Anaheim, California at the United Soccer Coaches Convention. I'm Michael Madgett, flying solo right now because Saskia Weber is doing her best manager or agent representation right now. She's representing the brand strong over on the exhibit hall floor right now. If you guys, by the way, are live right now watching this on IG Live or YouTube or on the Union app or anywhere sorts of things like that, go to Exhibit Hall D. If you're at the convention right now, we are in Media Row, and joining me right now, because otherwise it would just be me talking to myself to a little tiny Mevo camera, is some of the crew from the Keeper Institute, the one and only TKI, as you all know. Everybody introduce yourselves, starting with Cam.
Hi, you guys. I'm Kamryn Stablein. I've been coaching at the Keeper Institute since I was like 14, 15, and pretty excited. First convention.
Very, very, very specific and vague right there at the same exact time. Like 14 and 15 years old, that's the age that I was. But I'm not going to give you any information actually what I do at the Keeper Institute other than coaching. Continue on, Annabel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Annabel Austen. I'm a player at UPenn. Also my first convention, but I'm really excited to be here.
So, cool. And Chris?
What's up, y'all? I'm Christiana, Ogunsami. I am excited to be here. I'm one of the assistant coaches at Drexel, and I'm excited to have this chat.
I love it. Everybody's excited to be here. I'm not going to lie. It's because you guys went to bed at like 10:30 last night. I went to bed at like 1:30 in the morning and then had to wake up at 7 a.m. and then drive all the way to the convention. So I don't even know what I'm saying right now, to be honest with you guys here. It's kind of all over the place. So first off, guys, before we kind of get into the topic, and we're talking about kind of beginning your journey as a younger coach and kind of what resources you guys can provide to other young coaches out there. How did you all get involved in TKI? And Cam, obviously you've been doing it since you were 4 years old. So why don't you start off?
So actually, when I started my career at TKI, it wasn't at TKI, where I was at a club called the PA Strikers, and Jill actually happened to be the club coach. Funny little story. I was kind of tough to deal with.
Wait, like the team coach?
She wasn't the team coach. She was hired as the goalkeeper coach. So she worked directly with me.
Okay.
She ended up quitting her job to get away from me. And then I tracked her down later on, went to a couple of her like combines that she was doing early in TKI's career. She ended up deciding that I was pretty cool. I did a lot of self-work. I was like one of her first classes of interns, kind of lived with them for a little bit, worked, and the rest is history. Now I'm under her wing and doing the best that I can to keep going.
I love how you had you add in the under the wing part right there, like just in case she's watching right now. I just want to let you know that I am in the guidance, but that is kind of the important thing. Chris, obviously, you're coaching at the kind of the collegiate level right now with Drexel and stuff like that. You have some players probably who want to get into coaching. Like, so how important is it for them to see somebody like yourself make that transition from player to coach?
Yeah, I think representation matters in any space, whether it's like women in coaching, it's people of color in coaching. I also think for them, it's a really cool transition to life after sport, whether they want to coach or they want to mentor or anything like that. So it's just a really cool opportunity to sort of bridge the gap, to figure out maybe what is one potential thing they could do when they're done playing their sport in college. So.
One potential thing you could do when you're done playing your sport right there is get involved in demonstrations at a convention that take place literally in front of a podcast being recorded. Nothing makes it easier to record a podcast than a loud presentation taking place at the exact same time. Annabel, why don't you talk a little bit about like kind of what you're up to right now?
Yeah, so I'm a sophomore at Penn, and over this past summer, I interned at the Keeper Institute, which was an amazing opportunity. Couldn't have spent my summer any other way. And then this fall, I started coaching, taking on some individuals, working with groups. Yeah, that's about it. Then I just keep doing that, and I've really learned a lot about coaching, and that's really helped me as a player as well.
Yeah, now obviously all of you guys we're coaching at the TKI, and they have that incredible internship program. I mean, Kamryn, did you start the internship program because you were there since you were 2 years old? So
so I wouldn't say that I necessarily started the program. However, I was like kind of the first model where I came in and I was like, I want to coach, I want to play. How do I do that? And they kind of created this almost position where they're like, okay, you're going to coach, we're going to teach you a little bit, you're going to start taking on individuals, and for that we'll like train you.
Yeah.
Which was great because I was about to go into college. I was super pumped for that. And then from there, it kind of developed more. Like they opened up the internship. They created their first class. I was in technically their second class of interns where I like had the official title, but I was kind of around the entire time and watched that intern come to fruition. I know Chris ran it for a little bit, which was awesome.
Wait, hold on.
Let's,
and by the way, guys, you guys don't need to wait for me to ask you a question. You can literally talk whenever you want.
Oh,
like,
perfect.
Yeah. But hold on. So you were running the internship program. Okay. So that feels like one of those types of situations where it's kind of like you're kind of like in a position of, I don't want to say power but leadership with people that are almost your peers. Is that a difficult situation?
Yeah, I feel like, also when I started as a college coach, my first senior class were my freshmen when I was a senior. So there's always been interesting instances where you kind of have to manage boundaries, manage relationships. However, when I sort of got to start the internship class right after Cam, I started with high school kids and college kids at different points. So I think really what it was is if you can define your role particularly like well and set a boundary, then it's not necessarily an issue. But my goal as an intern director, when I was the intern director, is to just mentor them, to really, pour into them, teach them how to coach, right? TKI is unique in the way that we do things, but it's more so what can you do so that you can develop your own thing, even if you are at TKI or you leave.
I love that, like that empowerment of the athlete themselves as opposed to them being spoon-fed. Obviously, Annabel, you're still playing in college right now. Being in an environment like a TKI where you are free to explore, and being empowered to like learn on your own as opposed to like the coach telling you what to do. Does that help you when you get back to the collegiate environment, because now you're not expecting for all the questions to be answered for you?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And as a coach in that too, and kind of learning about how kids learn best and how exploration can help kids learn a lot more than if I were to just tell them what to do. I've really taken that in as a player as well. And when I get back to my team environment, especially when we jump in with the entire team, not just goalkeeper setting, it's more about like finding ways where I can explore and not really worried about making mistakes. I can kind of just explore, figure out what works for me.
See, I think one of the things that's really cool about that is like not worry about making mistakes, exploring, that sort of thing. Cam, I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of young coaches make, and I'm sure you all can attest for this, is feel like we have to coach. We have to be giving instruction all the time. We have to be breaking things down all the time. We have to, and after a while you start realizing you're like, oh, I'm actually removing the thinking aspect of these goalkeepers and their development.
Yeah, and I think you bring a really interesting point. And like, I grew up in an environment where, yes, Jill was kind of changing her style of coaching as I was growing older and like moving away from that technical, this is exactly the way that you have to do things. And my own coaching had to shift as I've gotten into this like evolution of goalkeeping. And one of my biggest struggles when I first started was like, I didn't always necessarily have the confidence to come in and command a room, being younger, being their same age. I know Chris didn't really struggle, but I really, really struggled to set that boundary and be like, okay.
Chris is like, yeah, I didn't struggle
Chris
at all.
Chris is perfect.
Absolutely not.
But yeah, no, I really struggled to, how do I have confidence in what I'm selling and then also breed confidence in the athlete to buy in?
Yeah.
And that was a big balance for me.
See, I want to talk about this because, one of the problems I think, Chris, that happens with a lot of young coaches out there is like they try to be like coaches they know or what their idea of a coach is. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Cam is more of the outgoing type of vocal coach, and Chris, you're a little bit more cerebral in that regard. At what point did you start getting comfortable with I'm just going to be me when I'm coaching?
I think I don't know that there's ever been a time when I wasn't me when I was coaching. I think so you bring up the concept of being cerebral. I'm a therapist coach. I'm a coach therapist. It's kind of how I operate. And I feel like I've operated that way even from a young age when I was coaching as a high school kid. And some of it came from, I want to be the coach that I know I wanted when I was a player.
Yeah.
And some of that is, yes, you're pulling from the great stuff that your coaches have done in the past, the not so great stuff that your coaches have done in the past. But a lot of times it's just having the willingness to go where the athlete wants to go. If you can make space for your athlete and be flexible and adaptable to do what, support them in the best way that they need to be supported. That's helpful. And also being able to serve athletes from different backgrounds, different experiences, all that stuff really stretches you in terms of flexibility. But even still, it's not really about winning the approval of the athlete right then and there. It's not really about trying to be the smartest person in the room. If you can engage with it with curiosity and just humility, I think you can empower your athlete, but also you can continue to learn and say, oh, I said it this way. Maybe that's not the best way to do it. Let's try and learn about it in a different way. So, yes, as humble and as curious as you can be as a coach, I think makes you the most secure within yourself because you're not trying to be like somebody else and you're not trying to be everything for your athlete at all times. Speaking
Speaking of secure, Annabel, you're very secure being in an environment with such grizzled veteran coaches right here, as still a consistent player yourself right now. I want to talk about one thing that happens with a lot of young coaches is when they've been coaching a lot. And this happened to me. I go back into my playing environment. And now I start recognizing that I'm trying to be a coach in that environment as opposed to the player. How do you separate that so that you don't start so you still feel like you're part of that community with that goalkeeper union as opposed to they're like, oh, well, she's telling me what to do type of a thing?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely one of the things I've struggled with re-entering my college team after the summer, especially because I'm also on the leadership council for my team. So I do have this role a little bit of.
I feel like everyone who's been through TKI is on some sort of leadership program at their school. It comes with the territory. It comes with the territory. Like on the application process, Jill and Marie are just they're like, are you involved in any sort of leadership? They're like, okay, if you're not going to get this interview. We continue.
Yeah, but I think that one of the biggest things I've found has helped me is to approach my teammates as people first and just understand that when I'm talking to them and maybe I do have a point or something that could come across as coaching, well, they're my teammates first and they're my friends and I can address them in that way. And that's really helped separate the coach player dynamic.
Yeah. Cam, I want to ask you this, in regards to what you were kind of talking about with the exploration and everything like that. There's a difference between exploration and just being a lazy coach and just being like, oh no, they're exploring. I'm like, well, that guy is doing somersaults for some reason. So at what point do you step in?
Yeah, so I think something that really separates the good coaches from the great coaches is this intuition of what your athlete needs. I think too often coaches come into this space and they're repeating information, right? They're repeating what they've heard. They're trying to intercept in that way. And so much of coaching is based on who you're actually working with. I watch a kid from the minute they walk in the door and figure out when it is that they're going to need support. And you can start to see it. They're getting frustrated. Okay, let's take a pause. Where are you struggling? And I think the biggest difference is not necessarily exploration versus okay, I'm not stepping in at all. It's what does my athlete need to be successful and how can I get them there themselves and not give them the answers? That is more about the exploration. They explore, even if we know the answers, they explore and find their own way there.
See, it sounds like a lot you're talking about coaching behaviors, and Chris, obviously somebody, who's involved on the whole psych side and everything like that. You understand how important it is to recognize your coaching behaviors and recognize when you speak in a certain tone, when you don't speak in a certain tone. And I don't want to say that you're manipulating the athlete, but you're trying to get you're trying to convey information in a way that they understand it, and sometimes it's going to take a certain type of direction, other times it can take other type of direction, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we operate through language, some of which is like overt. I'm talking to you and I'm trying to portray it in one way. Some of which is covert. It's my body language. It's the tone I'm using. All of it matters. And I think for coaches, if you only really care about the content of what you're saying, your actual words and whatever, then you're missing the mark. Because what ends up happening is you can create athletes that can regurgitate information as they do in school all day, every day, but they don't actually know how to apply things. They don't actually know how to deal with the emotions of it, like Cam's sort of talking about. Like, what does it feel like to do this new thing I've never done before? I can, like, dump all information on you, but I'm not acknowledging that, no, you're anxious because you've never done this before. So what I think is important is it's more about what you don't say, but it's also more so about the process that gets them to actually where you want them to go. And I think with that point, a lot of new coaches, any coach really, can have imposter syndrome and feel like I have to be the smartest person in the room. I have to know everything. I have got to solve a problem. But all like the joy of the process is watching them explore, is watching us explore even how to teach new concepts. That's how you really see people grow. And that's how you really see people learn to have a bit of autonomy also. But you've got to be patient. And I don't think a lot of us are very patient.
Patience, that's the tough thing. And like, you know, Annabel, how long have you been coaching now?
Like 3-4 months.
Okay.
She's a baby.
So people also have to be patient with you as a young coach, right?
For sure.
Yeah. And like, but like in regards to that, like, I think that's the problem a lot of times, especially when we're athletes and we're so competitive. I know me, when I was a young coach, I wanted it to all happen overnight. I wanted to be like, oh, well, I've got all this information. Like, why is it not working? Why is that kid still, you know, like diving on their stuff? Like, what am I doing wrong type of a thing? You know, and you start taking it out on yourself.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite parts about the Keeper Institute is there's so many coaches and each one has their own style and way of teaching. And coming into the summer and doing the internship, I shadowed every single person multiple times throughout the summer. And then when I started coaching on my own in the fall, it took me a couple months to really realize, like, okay, this is something I really liked from this coach. I'm going to take that. This other coach did this thing. I'm going to take that and start to define who I am as my coach.
Yeah. By the way, I love the fact I was like, how long you been coaching? I felt like you were going to be like, yesterday. I started yesterday this journey, so I'm very fresh into the into. Does it feel that?
Yeah. Like she just got here.
Okay. Well, you know, but that's an interesting thing too, like Cam and Chris, for both of you guys, whoever wants to step in right here. When you have a player like Annabel, who, you know, you've seen her progression as a player, and now she's involved on the coaching side with you. Is it difficult to kind of remove that, like still looking at her as like, I don't want to say a camper, because you know, young goalkeeper?
I'll be really honest. Annabel has absolutely challenged every single coach in the facility, and I've truly never seen such a young talent at this level. Like, she is incredible.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah.
Wow.
Her ideas are evolutionary. I thought that I was like a talented young coach, and she has made me question so many different things in the way that I teach them. Like, I think it's so important that we keep inviting young minds and who's still in the game, because the game is changing 24/7. And if we aren't hearing the player's perspective, how do we get better? How do we reach them?
Speaking of that, let's get back to Chris here, because I want to talk about that feedback and communication. That's, I think, something that young coaches really have difficulty with, is not recognizing that they need to learn from their players too.
Yeah. Well, if you're not watching with an open mind, you can't help give kids feedback. Like, it's just not going to happen. And you also have a really hard time accepting feedback, right? I feel like sometimes we go into the space and we're already assuming what we want to see. We're already assuming what they're going to say, and we're already assuming what they're going to bring to the table or not bring to the table. So it doesn't allow us to be open to feedback, either from having a player that is also coaching or a player that's newer to the game. One of the things I love about getting to work with AB, and even some other players that I've had at Drexel that have come through TKI as an intern or whatever, is now they sort of have an idea of what a coach brain looks like. So my communication to them is different than my communication to a player that doesn't understand it from a coaching perspective. So, but it's not a threat to me as a coach.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that's interesting is you might have a player that knows more in one area than you. I don't understand why that would be threatening if you're secure. right? They know more than you in that area because they're constantly seeing the way the game is evolving, like Cam's talking about. So why don't we collaborate in the process and figure out what's the best way for me to support you? How do we change the way we're explaining certain things, or do we need to add new skills? So it's awesome.
And I think, that's something in regards to like AB talking about kind of like, you're in the playing environment right now. Like, talk about being freshly exposed to new coaching techniques, new coaching things constantly, because you're in the game that's currently evolving right now. Like, how important is it for a coach to listen to a player like yourself who maybe you're an older coach who hasn't experienced what you're experiencing right now, and be open to that feedback to get the best out of you?
Yeah, I mean, I have two answers to that.
Okay.
First off, as a coach who's also a player, whenever I kind of think about a new point or a new perspective on something, I also think about it from a player perspective and how I would feel receiving that information. And that's something that's really helped me become the coach I am. Obviously, not all coaches can be players at the same time. So I think as a coach who's not a player, it's really important to be understanding a player's perspective and understanding how they're actually internalizing and understanding that information so that you can best support them in the ways they need.
Yeah. Cam, talking about what AB just said there, right there, in regards to like the fact that like, coaches that aren't playing right now, I think one of the biggest problems that we make when we are young coaches and we're not playing anymore is we start just thinking coach, and not player mentality. And we just start doing everything conceptually. It's like, well, this is what we're supposed to do right now, this progression right there. But like when you were a player, like the fatigue that took, you just played that game the day before, or, oh, I had high school practice today too. Like, we have to take these things into consideration and empathize with these players and be able to be flexible with what we want out of that session.
Yeah, I think that coaching is one of the most selfless jobs in the world. It's not about you. It's not about the way that you're presenting. It's not about the way that you appear to have all of this knowledge. It's about reaching your player. If you can't reach your player, I don't care how much knowledge you have. It doesn't matter. It's not being imparted onto that next generation. And you cannot influence somebody or connect with somebody if you don't get to know them and care about their story and care about what they're going through. And if you don't, as a coach, ask, how do you expect your players to buy in to that you care about their development?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing is that they need to know you care, and Chris, how do we make sure that because I think a lot of the times players, they've either been environments where they've been burned before, or they're just insecure, or they have trust issues from anything else going on in their lives. How do we still consider, put ourselves in a position of leadership with them, but at the same time, they feel comfortable with us, that we're there for them and are willing to share whatever we need from them?
Yeah, I think so. This is obviously challenging because it's uncomfortable. We don't like to sit with emotion. We don't like to sit with people's stuff. So I think for coaches, if you're going to say you're open to your athletes' ability to bring their baggage, then you have to legitimately be open to that and make space for it, and not say, okay, well, we don't have time for this because we got to train tomorrow. Legitimately, if the person matters more than a player, then that should dictate your priorities. That dictates your time. That dictates how you facilitate your team. That dictates what you put all of your stuff into. So I think, a way to be able to make sure that players want to be known by you, or that they are known, you are known by them also, is just modeling it. You've got to model some vulnerability. You've got to model what it looks like to engage in challenging conversations also. And you really just have to make space. Like, coaches want to fill space with their own voice. If a kid's talking, sit and listen, be active, not just quick to move to the next thing. So it's really just about making space for them, but modeling it, having some integrity in the way that you do it also.
So I love some of the stuff that you just said right there. I don't know if you guys, so Dan Abrahams just did, I don't know if you guys ever listened to a sports psych show, but he did a whole episode on vulnerability recently. And there's so many great things there. And I don't know, do any of you guys watch Fargo, the show Fargo, by any chance?
I've seen Fargo.
Okay. Have you seen season 5, the recent season?
No.
So the whole theme of, and I don't want to spoil Fargo for anybody who's watching it out there, it's an amazing show. But the whole theme this year has been about toxicity in regards to how, when you don't show vulnerability, when you're not willing to be trusting, how that potentially could lead to a lot of dangerous situations, and obviously Fargo takes it to the nth degree. But I think the thing is that as coaches, you're only going to go as far as you're willing to be vulnerable and admit that you don't know everything, right, AB?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I actually speak on this from a player perspective?
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think before I came to college, I really saw like a successful player as somebody who was able to leave their emotions aside when they step on the field, and that was something that was really harmful to my game. And having come to TKI, where I'm surrounded by coaches who view people as people above players, and understanding that people have emotions and other things going on in their life, and that's going to impact how they're playing and feeling on a given day, I've really been able to step into like a new perspective and understand myself as a person and then a player, and that's helped with my growth tremendously.
So I love what you just said right there, and that's so eloquent. And and like Cam, I think more young, like you're saying, look at this rock star. So many rock stars here. I mean, honestly, I'm my head is exploding type of thing, but like that's that next level, right? That's that next level of understanding of like we are going to have emotions. Like if we try to pretend that they're not happening, we're just going to be in our heads.
Yeah. I mean, it's so harmful. I mean, how many times do you walk into a room and you're expected to put on this performance, right? And
literally every second I walk into a room.
and you're exhausted
As
and
we're
you're
on a podcast.
exhausted and it's hard to manage mistakes. It's hard to manage emotions. If we don't create space for our athletes to feel safe in that and say, hey, we get it. You're not at 100% today. How can we support you and get the best out of this situation? That doesn't mean we don't care about performance. We do. We care about getting the best, but we also care about the fact that maybe their best is not exactly what it is every single day. And that's okay because we love you, we support you, and we know you're talented. And it doesn't matter that your play may fluctuate at times.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Chris.
I was going to add, like, there's a difference between being resilient and being numb. And I think in sport, we want athletes, we want coaches to be numb. So, like, it's very Frozen 2, Elsa, conceal, don't feel kind of thing. What happens? She can't figure out how to do anything, and now she almost kills her sister, which is kind of what happens in sport, where we don't know how to deal with our emotions, and then they show up, right? They're always going to show up in a way that is completely inconvenient and out of our control. So I think it's what's most helpful for coaches. One, we have to model this first and foremost. But for athletes, it's, hey, your emotions are not the bad guy. As a matter of fact, I need to be able to utilize information from my emotions, utilize information from my intellects and my logical side of my brain, and be able to be a wise and intelligent athlete. I say this to these guys all the time. A mindful athlete is an intelligent athlete, which is a really, really great athlete. And you can't be mindful if you're not willing to be attuned to your emotions or even what's going on in your thought life. So it's got to be both. It can't just be one thing or the other.
Can I full circle this?
Yes.
Awesome. I think that if an athlete is able to be emotionally vulnerable, then you're putting them in a space where they can explore and make mistakes and learn from those mistakes and grow. So at TKI, we talk about emotional vulnerability a lot because that puts all our athletes that walk in those doors in a space where they can make mistakes, and that's okay. And we want that, and we encourage that, and that's how they grow.
Yeah. See, and I love what you just said right there. And I think that's one of the things I think, honestly, we speak about the Keeper Institute here, on this podcast, and everything, very, very highly. But I think one of the things that people take away from on a macro standpoint of TKI, regardless of whether it's goalkeeping or it's ballet dancing or whatever it is that if you create a space like that, an environment like that for a young person, they're going to succeed in life because all these lessons get translated over into life. Kim, I don't know if you want to speak on that.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, welcome to the business model. Here's the thing. TKI cares so much about character. And yes, success. Like, you're talking about success. But we don't care about success in this performance aspect or in this, like, sports aspect. We care about success in the way of, like, is the athlete fulfilled? Are they happy? Do they feel content? Do they feel supported? Do they feel loved? Do they feel like if they walk in a room and they see us, they can approach us and know that we're there for them? And that is the actual message we're trying to spend. Like, sports is a really great vehicle for us to connect with young people. However, our message has so much more to do with the human rather than like, okay, you're a goalkeeper. Great. Welcome to the facility. Let's talk about your character.
Yeah. And I think, like kind of as we start kind of wrapping everything up here, and I think, this has been such a massive conversation, and I'm glad, and thank you to Jill for offering this opportunity for you all to come on Con right here, because this is really, really, for me, I'm growing from it. But Chris, just to talk to you about this right there, is that like, I think that a lot of young coaches out there forget that there's a person outside of just the goalkeeper, and they never actually learn about that person. They only see them during their sessions. All they know about them is as a goalkeeper. And then they're like, it's the same thing as like an estranged parent. It's like, oh, you're into like you're into like blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, I didn't even know you were so into Marvel. And it's like, well, you never talked to me.
Yeah, well, I think that's sport culture, right? So sport culture in this consumerist sort of mindset benefits from you solely being a robot that's a means to an end for me to be successful or whatever. It's almost like a fan mentality. That's why athletes experience the things that they experience at the hand of fans. So I think for coaches, number one, you need to remember that you are a person and not just a coach also. And number two, that way, now let's have a conversation between you and your athlete, like really get to know them as people. Because to Cam's point, nobody cares how much you know unless they know how much you care, right? That's the adage, everybody knows it. So for young coaches and coaches anywhere, remind yourself like, hey, ultimately, who are you? It's not what you do. And you know that that's the case as a coach. So why not model that same behavior? Why not reinforce that same idea with your athletes? You are much more than being a goalkeeper. And as a matter of fact, what you do outside of goalkeeping is much more valuable because your value is not limited to how many saves you can make today. So yeah, we just want to be mindful of that.
I feel like I'm at a motivational talk right now. Like I'm feeling like so galvanized. Like I want to go conquer the world right now. After all of this, I know a lot of you guys who've been at convention right now are exhausted. I know there's a lot going on and stuff like that, but I really, really, really encourage you, if you run into any of these young, fantastic, young coaches here, please give them a chat. They're always willing to talk, right, Cam?
I'll never stop talking, ever.
That's true.
I wish there was an off button. I haven't found it. Chris has been trying to find it since I was like 14 and I was in the internship.
Yeah, true. That is true.
And AB's willing to talk. For the last 4 months, she's been learning how to talk, so she's good. She's good and ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
We just got the full sentences.
Oh my gosh, guys! If you guys are not familiar, we will be at TKI next week at TKI San Diego. Fantastic program going on. There's going to be TKI pros there. Little people like Kaylin Sheridan, Michelle Bay, just a lot. Aubrey Kingsbury, like some people you may have heard of. Okay,
no big deal.
No big deal. No big deal whatsoever. But it's definitely worth checking it out, guys. If you don't know anything about it, just go to thekeeperinstitute.com. You can find out all the information about the clinic. Come out and see what the whole TKI philosophy is all about. Their methodology, if we want to use coach speak, right over there. And we're going to be doing some live shows there. So say hello to us. We'll be sharing the Union app with you guys if you guys are not familiar with it. Really, really cool platform. All about mentorship, all about engagement. Maybe one day these people will be mentors on there. I don't know. My agent's not here. My agent's over there talking to Jill. So I'll have to wait and find out what the verdict's going to be on all that stuff. Chris, if people want to connect with you, where's the best place?
Well, besides at TKI, you can hit me at Drexel. My email is dto32 at drexel.edu. Follow me on Instagram, ludicrous32.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes just in case you did not get that that quickly. AB, what about you? I don't know what the NCAA restrictions are on this kind of stuff now. Are you allowed to give away your information?
I have no idea, actually. I mean, I assume so, but my email is Austen at thekeeperinstitute.com.
Oh, my God. That's hilarious. So I have to put this up on the screen right there.
No way.
Oh my God. Oh,
Can't
Matt, that's hilarious, Matt. That is so funny. All right, guys, if you want to reach out to us, it's all obviously contact at insidetheatmedia.com. If you have a guest suggestion or a topic suggestion, or at Goalkeeper Podcast on the Union app, go to theuniongk.com. It's a landing page that has all the information on what the Union GK is all about. We're going to go rest our voices. That's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later, guys.
Hey!